So there's a lot of guys that have belts that are not ready to bridge the chain who buy this package because they can keep their wheels straighter and they don't have problems with the belts breaking from misalignment.
So that's why a lot of people are upgrading their axle and their adjusters, even if they're using belt, because this is a much more finite system. It can handle substantially more power than the factory.
And one guy that we know, a friend of ours, he broke one in Utah. He was 3.5 hours from anybody in civilization.
Yeah.
Let's say something happens to your chain, you can snake a chain back through.
Exactly.
To replace a belt, you're disassembling the whole motorcycle.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
the primary has to come off. Like, it is a very big job to replace the belt.
Traveling Tall is brought to you by Custom Dynamics, Zippers Performance, Khrome Works, Red Line Oil, Volunteer Audio, and Let's Roll. We about to ride, you about to ride. It's that time of year again. Traveling Tall's Run to the Hills 3. We are ready. And I can't wait to have you guys down to Knoxville, Tennessee. We are going to ride. We are going to ride. The host hotel will be the Hilton Garden Inn in Knoxville, Tennessee, 6200 Paper Mill Drive. Click the link below in the description to get a discounted rate. The banquet is on Saturday night, and tickets will be on sale to the banquet. Of course, we're going to have t-shirts provided and a giveaway for those who attend the banquet. We only have 130 tickets that we can sell. Last year, they sold out quickly. This year, I'm expecting it to do the same. I'll be giving you some more details on the ride that'll be coming up, so you make sure that you hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications to be notified so you can receive up-to-the-minute information about the rides that we're going to be riding at Traveling Tall's Run to the Hills 3. Guys, I hope to see you there. Don't forget, mark your calendar for June 9th, 10th, and 11th for Traveling Tall's Run to the Hills 3. Last year we had a blast. This year's going to be even better. Like, share, and subscribe. Keep gliding, and as always, have a blessed day.
All right, guys, it is a beautiful day today, and I'm here at Zippers Performance in Elk Ridge, Maryland. And if you remember about a month, maybe a little bit longer than that, 2 or 3 months ago, when I got the 128 kit installed on my motorcycle, well, there's a few things that had to be changed for the upgraded power. And one of the things that I was really excited about was the chain conversion kit. Now, when you're making 161 horsepower and 153 foot-pounds of torque, it's important to be able to manage all that power. Now, I know people that have belts, but I felt more comfortable having the chain kit on my motorcycle. Today, we're going to be talking about chain conversion kits and how to care for them, and a little bit about why a chain is important when you're having a motorcycle with that much power. I'm here with Dan Fitzmaurice at Zippers Performance, so let's get into the video.
So we've got a little collection of things here on the table, obviously, because we want to go back to the history of the belt. It's been on the Harleys now since the early to mid 80s, and we get a lot of calls from guys that they've never really adjusted a chain before. Chains have been around on motorcycles since the beginning. Very easy process as far as how to take care of them, how to lubricate them, how to adjust them, how to get your sprocket alignment. So we're just going to try to touch on those things today. And the other thing is that if you do these things and you do them correctly and in a timely fashion, you can get a really extended amount of wear out of your chain system. When you see chains that really have very, very heavy tight spots, and we'll cover that on the motorcycle in a little bit, or you see teeth that are starting to look like C's where they're pulling, right, on this 7075 aluminum sprocket, or even a steel sprocket, doesn't matter. You can see how it's pulling that way, and look on the back side of this where you can come down in there and look at that wear that's on there. And those are all from really problems with the maintenance and the lubrication of the system, because it's very important that the chain's aligned, it's very important that it's adjusted correctly, and it's very important that we lubricate on a regular basis. Now, on the table we also have some pieces here that Adam designed. That this is the this is the hub assembly. You can see this particular one has a 7075 aluminum sprocket on it. Yours, you have a 1018 steel. We offer it both ways. This center hub is made of 7075 aircraft material. It's the strongest there is out there. I'm not sure what our competitors manufacturers on theirs, but we do all these in 7075. And another caveat that's pretty neat about this package is that this system is sold with this chrome moly axle, and it's solid, versus the Harley, axle, the standard axle on the OE package. It's hollow, and this system here is designed to replace the eccentrics that go on the swing arm, and that's how you adjust a belt system, by rotating these. And this is a very, very structural, heavy duty system here that you see. It's got a slider, and these are all plated, and the adjuster is very strong. But what this really does is it keeps the axle cinched so the wheel can't shift under a load at the racetrack, a big heavy launch, or just an acceleration. It keeps the wheel. So there's a lot of guys that have belts that are not ready to bridge the chain who buy this package because they can keep their wheels straighter and they don't have problems with the belts breaking from misalignment, not necessarily from the power.
And this is the one right here. That is what I have had on the bike when I stopped with the belt.
Correct.
So you're saying, guys, so he's saying that they offer this. If you're not ready to go to a chain conversion kit, there's still another level of safety, or another level to adjustability to go up with your belt, and that's this right here.
Correct.
Now, what are these called here?
These are, we call them sliders and blocks, but they are the chain adjuster. They actually are sitting right here on this motorcycle, and that allows the axle to traverse forward and backwards and be locked in place with that double nut system. And it compensates for whatever the tolerance stack is on the slots in the swing arm. You don't have to take and modify the swing arm to adapt this kit to your motorcycle. This is something that was designed, it was engineered as a bolt-on package because of the amount of travel that they have.
One thing that I'd like to add, these cam adjusters work pretty well, but there's kind of a trick that I've found. I did a study, and over 80% of the motorcycles that came through here, this is supposed to go up against a post, and this is how it basically sets the alignment. When you put the final torque on the axle nut, sometimes that slips a little bit. And the vast majority of motorcycles that came through our shop, this was not actually touching that post. Now, what can happen if that's not touching and you have a lot of power and you get into the throttle, that axle can move.
It's moving.
So you can set this up to where you think everything is straight, and you put that final torque on and then get into the throttle, it'll actually move a little bit. So that's why a lot of people are upgrading their axle and their adjusters, even if they're using belt, because this is a much more finite system. It can handle substantially more power than the factory, and it's the classic traditional way of adjusting your wheel. Most motorcycles have a system like that.
So what you're saying to me, it's easier to break a belt when it's not aligned properly.
That is absolutely correct. And you may feel that you have it correct, and then as you ride, it may actually move a little bit.
Right. So with this, that's a much more...
You're actually locking the axle down in place.
Right.
So it does not have that ability to slip when you put that final torque on.
You need about 100 and I think 95 to 105 foot-pounds of torque on that nut, which dovetails right into what Adam was saying. Is maybe you got it up to 80, and by the time you put the final torque on it, and that eccentric just tweaks and it just moves away from the pad that it's supposed to sit on. And you're going to need a torque wrench, to do this type of work. This is what happens at the dealer. This is how they're supposed to do it. Once it's final torqued, the E-clip just goes right in place on the axle. And if you do that with that system, it's not going to come loose. We've got guys that are making absurd amounts of power using these systems, and they just work every time.
So my motorcycle, again, it's chain drive, We were at the 124 sleeper. It was belt drive. We went to the 124 muscle, and it was belt drive. But when we went over to the 128 stage 4 muscle, then it became chain drive. So what is the threshold? Because I was kind of at the threshold with the 124 muscle. Am I right? And then when we went over to the 128, we knew that we had to go chain drive.
Traction and riding style. You're at the track a lot, got the Dynabite spraying on there, your shoe comes off your foot because you walk across, you know, and you're going to have a lot of shock value by going from basically a launch RPM to full. That's hard on the belt. The belts are very good. I mean, it's a good system. I've used it on engines that make this much power and use it. Now that we can keep it straight, it has a wider, you know, threshold now.
Okay.
But if you are really making a lot of power and you're a very aggressive rider, and maybe, you know, we have people that buy chain drives because they live on dirt roads.
Yeah.
They get pebbles and stuff up on the belt, punctures the belt. We have guys who travel a lot and they've broken belts and they just don't want to be. I heard you mention that earlier on.
Yeah.
And one guy that we know, a friend of ours, he broke one in Utah. He was 3.5 hours from anybody in civilization.
Yeah, exactly. You stand a better chance. You stand a better chance being able to fix a chain than you do with belt inside.
Well, the main thing is, you know, let's say something happens to your chain, you can snake a chain back through.
Exactly.
To replace a belt, you're disassembling the whole motorcycle.
Yeah,
I mean, the primary has to come off. Like, it is a very big job to replace the belt.
If you look at these are O-ring chains, and these are what we call drag chains. And the drag chains don't have any O-rings in them. Now, the neat part about the O-ring is that it has a way to seal the chain, because what actually is what degrades the chain or becomes the death of the chain, and then like we talked about earlier to the sprockets, is we get contaminants in here. And the contaminants get in there, and because we have a pin, as you can see, that's staked in there, and we have the plate, and then we have these rollers that have to spin, and we need everything to rotate and spin in lubrication. And what the O-ring does is it keeps the chain cleaner. But we do get calls and people say, I want the chain that you don't have to oil. And that's not true. I mean, you have to lubricate.
That's called a belt.
Yeah.
The chain that you don't have to lubricate is called a belt.
So we're gonna lubricate an O-ring chain. We're gonna lubricate a drag chain. Either one, you know, we have to do so. There's a drag chain. It doesn't have any O-rings in between the pins. It has what feels like less resistance because it doesn't have that rubber seal that's kind of staked in there. But they both serve a purpose. The drag chain really is applied for what I would call the heaviest shock loads, the drag racing only thing. If the engine is used in some other things, endurance, racing, or whether it's road racing, or whether you're using it on a street bike, you might find that the O-ring chain is a better system.
All right, guys, so we talked about chains, we talked about sprockets, we talked about belts. Now we're going to actually show you how to adjust the chain. So we're going to go over to my motorcycle here. And what do we have here, Dan?
Well, so with your motorcycle set up the way that it is, we believe that the first step that you should do in setting up your chain for the first time would be how to establish proper alignment. And that alignment means between this sprocket and a sprocket that we really can't really see. And because we want to get the wheel set properly so that we have the proper alignment, and then from there we can adjust the chain forward or backwards. Now, it's a bit of a challenge on a Touring model motorcycle compared to a Softail or a Dyna or an FXR or a Sportster, because with those type of motorcycles, see, we can actually take a visual view. I just pretend this isn't here on that fender, and we can mount a little tool that clamps to the chain, and this rod will use a visual sight down through there to make sure that we have the wheel properly tipped in alignment. But we don't have that luxury, although we could take the fender off. I mean, that is a possibility. But with the guard removed on the bottom here, the belt guard, what we can do is we can come down through here, and we'll actually, because our chain needs to be adjusted, you can see by a little bit of movement in there, okay? We're going to put some pressure on the top of the chain I'm gonna have you come down here with your camera down here, and we're gonna look from this point where I'm shining the light down, all the way down to the front sprocket, if you can get in there. And that's one way that we can do that. Watch when Adam lets go of the pressure of the chain. There we go, you see? And now we can see that we have proper alignment from the rear sprocket to the front sprocket. If we didn't, we're gonna loosen the axle and get those things purposely lined up in place. So in that segment where we were just looking down the trail of the bottom of the sprocket, you know, if our wheel was tipped this way, so we had the draw on the adjuster pulled too much on the left and not enough on the right, then when we would look down there, that's what it would look like. Same thing if we were tipped the other way. We don't want that. We have to establish proper alignment before we try to adjust the chain. And once you establish that, whether you, as I mentioned, you had the fender off, you can look down the top side or we can look down the bottom side, but that is like the datum point to how we start from, because misalignment is going to lead to sprocket and premature sprocket and chain wear. This is a little tool from Motion Pro that just clamps right in there. So when you are at the back, because as we talked about, we can't get a sight up here without taking the fender off on a touring model. We just tighten up the chain on the top side, and now we can get a sight view of the alignment of how that wheel is with that tool. Very nice, very simple to use, very inexpensive, good handy tool for anything, dirt bikes, any kind of road bike with a chain, and it's just another aid to give you versus just using, you know, your own sight from the rear sprocket to the front sprocket. Okay, so once we've established proper alignment, then we could adjust now, or we could inspect now. Now, I'm going to mention inspection because if the chain feels extraordinarily loose, or if it has, you know, we're looking for about 5/8 to 3/4 flea prey on the tight spot of the chain. Every chain has a tight spot. You rotate looking for it. So, see how much movement we have there? And then let's move up here. A little bit less, but this is a relatively new chain. This chain's is in very, very good shape. And one of the ways that we can tell is you can take a chain, whether it's adjusted or not, it would not matter even if it had adjustment on it, and you could take your index finger and your thumb and grab the pin and pull on it. And if you can pull that chain back, oh no, 1/4 of an inch, I've seen a 1/2 inch, where it just looks like it's just peeling back off the sprocket, those rollers and pins are probably in pretty bad shape. That same chain will also have a very large difference between the tight spot and the loose spot. That chain is prematurely worn. And if you look closer at it, you'll probably see some sprocket wear, mostly on the rear, but it can happen on the front as well. And it doesn't matter if you have a steel sprocket or aluminum sprocket, because wear is wear, and if you had that and it's time to replace the chain in the sprocket, then you're best forward to just do that so that you can start with a good established system, and then we'll talk a little more about the lubrication side of it. You notice here for you, that's the loose spot, and that's a little tighter there, but that's a tight spread. But the reality is that, you know, you're going to rotate and you're going to feel that, and you look for the loose spot and you look for the tight spot. You always adjust from the tight spot, because if we make that extraordinary loose spot adjusted up,
yeah,
what's it going to do when it gets to the tight spot?
Yeah.
Banjo string. So now that we've established that we have proper alignment, and we know how to inspect our chain and our sprockets for wear, and we know that we looked at our tight spot, we looked at our loose spot, we found our tight spot, and maybe we got about 1 inch of free play, and we want to take that up to about 5/8 to 3/4. So we're going to have to loosen the axle. Remember, the axle has a lot of torque on it, over 100 pounds. I've pre-adjusted it, so I don't have that, but notice I got a breaker bar on it, and you need something with leverage so you can get that axle to move. Okay, and we've got to get it loosened up so that we can move the axle in the swing arm. because it's not gonna move with that torque that's in place on it. Okay, so once we've been able to do that, now that tension, that grip that's on there has now been relaxed. And notice that we have two nuts, one that will be adjusting, the other will be a lock nut. These are 24 inches per thread, I believe. And when we rotate, we got to loosen up the lock nut, so that way we can do the lock nut just locks, the outboard locks, the inboard is what we adjust from. Okay, and we'll do the same thing on this
What
side.
size wrenches?
These are 9/16.
9/16.
Yep. So we've got that set there. So, and I like to have, you could either bump or maybe just take a hammer and just tap, but you want to make sure that it's all the way forward. It's where that alignment, this mark was established, because like we were talking earlier when Adam was mentioning about tightening the axle, well, we could do the same thing, loosening it. So, and so we make sure that our stops are all forward, you know, our adjusters are tight. And then at 24 inches per thread here. So if we move, you know, based on what we said we thought we had there, if we move one flat, that's 7 thousandths of travel. And we'll move a flat here. All right. And there you go. So we may not be set there. We have to go back and check. But and I'd say it's probably 2 flats based on that. And then we'll come back and adjust the second flat. So in other words, if the nut, let's just say this was set at 12 o'clock, we're just turning it 1 flat.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
What'd you say? See, now my slack is better.
Yeah.
And I'm happy with that. Now, I'm not done. We keep testing, and we're gonna full rotation, making sure that we didn't miss a potential tight spot that was in the chain. So see, now I'm on the loose spot, so I have a little more travel, and a little more travel, and now I'm getting to the tight spot, and
How much travel is acceptable down there?
I would say 5/8 to 3/4. You could run up to 7/8. Yeah. Now we're gonna rotate again. We don't want it too tight, because when the shock squats, you know, maybe you ride double, the swing arm pivots, we just want to make sure that it's good. You know, some guys that are really, really tight about how they do stuff like this will even put the rider on the motorcycle on the tight spot and have them compress the shock so that you may see that at the racetrack a lot, you know, because they want to make sure it's right. I'm satisfied with that. We've got 2 flats and we got good adjustment. We've got good movement. We don't have anything that's too tight when we do full rotation. And then the next thing for us to do is to lubricate. Lubrication with the chain lube is good. Now, I want to mention, if you ride in a really dirty environment, you live on a dirt road, you're off-roading this tour model package or whatever, I mean, we see a lot of things. If the chain's dirty, it should be taken off and cleaned, because lube is not going to remove dirt.
Okay.
It's going to lubricate the pins, it's going to lubricate the rollers, but it's not going to do that. So, you know, we like to always spray on the bottom, rotating the wheel.
But regular street riding is not going to make it. You talk about, like you said, dirt riding and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just, you know, we see all kinds of stuff that, you know, people say, must have a bad sprocket. You know, it can't be right, you know. And the chain is just full of grit and dirt and everything you can imagine. But so we're going to take the lube and we're just going to apply it here. And I want to get a good hand on the wheel. Notice we have the wheel up and this type of jack that you could use. And we're just going to basically, I got to get my hand steady there. There we go. There we go. And we're just applying the lube and letting it soak in to the pins and rollers. And once that shockproof gets embedded in there, all chain lubes will have some level of fling, but this stuff really does grip the chain. It does a phenomenal job. He did an amazing job developing that product. And you know, we wipe up anything that we have here that's left over. And the idea behind it is just so that the chain now has good lubrication in it. We've got our adjustment where we want it. We know our alignment's good. If we do this with some level of regularity, depending on how much you ride, how hard you ride, you can get a lot of mileage out of these sprockets. You got the strength of that 7075 hub. You got the strength of that Khrome moly axle. You've got the, you know, the strength and structural integrity of how these sliders are made. And you keep a little bit of lubrication and adjustment on your chain, you're going to get a lot of miles out of it.
Now, how often should you adjust your chain?
Well, that's a good question. So when the chain is new, it's going to move something. That's the case with yours. Mm-hmm. And then once it stretches initially, and you get the set of your end plate correct, and you get your lubrication in, it's going to level off. Yeah. There will be some level of stretch because, you know, there'll be times where you're just going to be at the track and you're just going to put it down. I mean, you know, and that's understandable. But when the chains require a lot of frequent adjustment, if you go back to the original thing of looking for the tight spot and the loose spot, you're going to find the loose spot is going to be very loose. And if you go back here and you pinch and you pull back, you're going to have a lot of movement. And that means that the chain it's really spent. It's done. And if the sprocket is still in good shape, and it might be if you catch it soon enough, as Adam said earlier, it's just a matter of knocking off the master link, take your new chain out, and you just hook it up to the master link and pull it through and set your alignment, do your adjustment, do your lubrication, and you're back in business again.
All right, guys, so that's it. That is how you care for your chain on your Harley-Davidson motorcycle. Listen, if you are interested in a chain kit for your motorcycle, make sure you go to zippersperformance.com. They have chain conversion kits for touring bikes, sportsters as well, too, right?
FXRs, Softails, Dynas.
A little bit of everything. So you make sure you check out zippersperformance.com. Thank you, Dan.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Adam.
Absolutely.
You guys, thank you for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more like it, please subscribe. Don't forget to check out zippersperformance.com. Again, thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe. Keep gliding. And as always, have a blessed day.